Because when you consider God as consciousness, it's the absence of God that produces suffering for people. Because you see, pain, fear, and these are normal emotional states that are temporary phenomenon that are meant to steer animals and humans away from danger. But you see, the ego perpetuates pain to necessitate its own residency in our mind. So ego is the metaphorical equivalent of Satan, the deceiver. You see, when they said God created the devil and hell, they're talking about in one fell swoop. During the Adam and Eve moment, the serpent was born, a need to analyze because of the disconnection from God. You see, God, as the infinite source of all creation, is the manner in which human beings were envisioned to be created in the likeness of God, bestowed with so much cognitive power that we would then develop imaginations where we could invent new futures, where we could understand the relationship between seeds and the flowering plants that we would eat, where we could shepherd life and take the mighty wolf and make him into a shepherd, where our capacity to create would give us profound gifts and advantages, where we wouldn't need the muscles and might of a gorilla because we would know what the gorilla was going to do before the gorilla would. And our creative capacity would allow us to objectively look at the future, where the fear of the fight or flight mechanism was a necessary ingredient for a healthy imagination to be able to strategize. You see, the intellectual power of the human mind was something that transcended and gave us so much access to the gift of consciousness that we could find this infinite expanse. You see, reality for the human being forms as this eloquent representation of the entire universe, and it forms as a neurological process of our brain. And we had so much extra consciousness that we could form a secondary experience of reality, a imagination that would be used for planning, where planning would be simulating realities to form imaginations that could then become memories to guide future behaviors, where we could know how to cause a woolly mammoth to fall into a trap, or generate agriculture, or capture the power of fire. And so the human being experienced a level of dominion over reality. We're not like other animals. We merely have a past-based experience to try to navigate. We could exploit the psychology of other animals by understanding it intuitively. And that's how we would herd them. That we would take advantage of the mechanics of their more simple form of consciousness. And understanding our relationship and place in nature was one of immense power and responsibility, where our understanding of the laws of nature would only empower our continuity, our ability to coexist and find the necessary balance, where it's not just the survival of the fittest, it's the survival of the balanced, where if you look at the reproductive rates of mice, it's because mice are the M&Ms of the animal kingdom. Everybody eats them. They have such a profound reproductive rate that if you did the math, that they can reproduce immediately, have 6 to 12 little pups per litter, and reproduce every 21 days. 5 females could produce nearly 2 million mice in a few years. But then when you look at the mighty lion, in that same time span, it would be 40 maximum. And so the lion's reproductive rate, its predatory tendencies, are evolutionarily dependent upon its patience, its calmness, that it has to maintain the proper numerical balance for the ecosystem to exist. But if the lion didn't exist, the gazelle might eat all the vegetables. And it picks out the weak ones, strengthening the genome. And so all living organisms, part of the ecosystem of life, are not just competing with each other. Because if they dominate each other, if they come out of balance for whatever reason, it becomes a destructive force, where love is life itself, where love is the necessity, and love is sometimes inconvenient. That the role of the mother bear is to prepare the baby bear for the realities of life without the mother, where abandonment that we feel is the reproduction of an induced separation anxiety loop in our mind. Because you see, adult animals don't feel abandoned, because the baby bears psychologically are organized around the mother based on separation anxiety. That all animals experience separation anxiety, but only within a specific age range connected to the necessity, which is based on their physical form. And so when you start to look at evolution, and you start to look at evolutionary biology, and you start to look at animal psychology, you start to understand the importance of emotion as forming the behavioral responses, the motivational instrument in an otherwise blank slate reality. That if an animal had no emotion, it would sit there motionless. That it would be being eaten, it wouldn't feel fear, wouldn't feel pain, because it doesn't have any real, inherent value for life. That the fear makes it run, the hunger makes it eat, the pain makes it stop what it's doing. And so the guardrails were necessary, that all of the individual emotions that constitute the entire color book of the human experience, if you take any one of them away, you do not have a human anymore. And so suffering is the absence of God, not the cause. You see, God as the pioneer of reality, as the created essence at the source of everything, consciousness itself, put into plan this entire universe. And as far as I can tell, beings merely through neurons have some entanglement with consciousness, that a temporary phenomenon, that as long as we're alive and we have eyes, the light will enter the eyes and produce a neurological effect. And as long as we're alive, the neuron will engage with consciousness. And consciousness is another to be determined energy or property that is something, in my view, existent beyond a three-dimensional architecture, something quantum. And so neurons don't have the capacity to self-stimulate, generate intentions. And so if you were to want to create conscious beings, and you were to do it in an inert universe, and you were to put into motion whatever it is that created this particular universe, think about the perfection of a Big Bang, where abiogenesis was an inevitability, and this blue planet took form in the infinite expanse of trillions of galaxies with hundreds of billions of stars. And this one, billions of years later, has consciousness, defying all the rules that govern the inert matter of the rest of the universe, yet the immensity of the gift itself isn't even recognizable when the emotions of a consciously segregated 5-year-old in dissociation are what's contextualizing each individual experience of reality. And the human being is executing the program of ego, a repetitive paradigm of behaviors that are stimulus response, involuntary, reflexive, projecting, fixing, changing, overcoming, crusading, group thinking. And it's all an abnormality.